The meeting room resignation that destroyed a $1 million contract. Let me paint you a picture of corporate stupidity so spectacular that it reads like a case study in How to Destroy Your Own Business 101. 3 years ago, I was the backbone of a digital agency that loved to flex about being a major player in the national market. They weren't wrong. We handled some serious accounts. But here's the thing about being someone's backbone. When you break, everything else comes crashing down. The setup: one person, impossible workload. I was the sole guardian of critical software systems for our top-tier clients. Not just monitoring, I'm talking full maintenance, troubleshooting, emergency response, and keeping everything running at the 99.999% uptime that these Fortune 500 companies demanded in their service level agreements. Meanwhile, I also managed an entire team handling similar responsibilities for smaller clients. Imagine being a one-person IT department for multiple million-dollar accounts while also being a team lead. That was my reality, and it was slowly killing me. The pattern: excuses, empty promises, and exhaustion. Every performance review played out like a broken record. Me: I need a raise. I'm handling workloads meant for 3 people. Management: budget's tight this year, maybe next quarter. Me: I desperately need help, at least one additional team member. Management: but you're handling it so well. Why fix what isn't broken? What they didn't see were the 3 a.m. emergency calls, the weekends spent babysitting servers, the stress-induced insomnia, and my personal life disintegrating under the weight of their critical systems. But hey, as long as their clients stayed happy and the money kept flowing, why would they care about one overworked employee? The raises I occasionally received were insulting. We're talking 2% increases that didn't even cover inflation, let alone compensate for the expanding responsibilities they kept dumping on my desk. The breaking point? 6 months of false hope. The latest performance review had been scheduled for months. I went in prepared with documentation of everything I'd accomplished, metrics showing how much money I'd saved the company, and a clear case for why I deserved both better compensation and additional team members. Their response? The same corporate buzzword salad about restructuring priorities and budget constraints. They dangled the possibility of revisiting compensation in the next fiscal quarter. Translation: another 6 months of empty promises. What they didn't know was that I'd been quietly networking. A competitor had been courting me for weeks, offering not just a 40% salary increase, but also a properly staffed team and reasonable work-life balance. The kind of offer that makes you realize just how badly you've been getting screwed. The nuclear option? Timing is everything. Here's where the story gets delicious. The day after my performance review rejection, we had a crucial in-person meeting scheduled with our second largest client, a contract worth millions annually. As the person responsible for their system maintenance, I was required to attend to discuss SLA conditions, uptime guarantees, and pricing for the contract renewal. Picture this. I'm sitting in a glass-walled conference room with my manager, several company executives, and the client's C-suite decision-makers. PowerPoint presentations about partnership excellence and commitment to service are flowing freely. Everyone's in their best suits, talking big numbers and making grand promises about reliability and support. And there I am, quietly rereading my job offer on my phone under the table. The irony was too perfect. Here were my bosses promising this client the same level of service that I'd been providing single-handedly while being denied basic recognition and fair compensation. They were literally selling my expertise and dedication while treating me like a replaceable cog. The moment digital signature heard round the office. My manager caught me looking at my phone and shot me a disapproving look. That's when I made the decision that would become company legend. Right there, in the middle of the client presentation, I 1. Emailed the competitor accepting their offer. 2. Received the contract within 5 minutes. They were clearly waiting for my response. 3. Digitally signed it within 10 minutes. 4. Immediately sent my resignation email to HR, my manager, and every executive in that room. The beautiful part? Half the recipients of my resignation email were sitting 3 feet away from me. still mid-presentation to the client. The aftermath. Watching Rome burn. The moment that email notification sound started pinging around the room was pure poetry. You could literally watch the color drain from faces as executives checked their phones mid-sentence. My manager's expression went from confusion to horror to pure rage in about 30 seconds. The client presentation ground to a halt. Sorry, we need a brief recess to handle an urgent internal matter. I got dragged into a side room where the questioning began. What the hell do you think you're doing? Do you realize what you've just done? This is completely unprofessional. My response was simple. I laid out 3 years of documented requests for fair compensation and adequate support, all denied. I explained how they'd built their service promises on my unpaid overtime and personal sacrifice. I pointed out the hypocrisy of promising excellence to clients while treating their key personnel like garbage. They were speechless, not because they disagreed, but because they'd never expected consequences for their actions. The domino effect. Karma in corporate form. The immediate fallout was exactly what you'd expect. Panic, finger-pointing, and a lot of very uncomfortable conversations with very important clients. But the real satisfaction came later. The client renewed their contract that year, probably because switching providers mid-cycle would have been a nightmare. But guess what happened 12 months later? Without me maintaining their systems, the company started experiencing the kind of outages and performance issues that I'd been preventing through sheer force of will and countless unpaid hours. They couldn't meet the 99.999% uptime SLA that had been my personal guarantee to maintain. The client didn't just leave. They terminated their multi-million-dollar contract and took their business elsewhere. Rumor has it, they specifically cited inadequate technical support and failure to meet service-level agreements as their primary reasons. The current state: success versus decline. Meanwhile, my career trajectory has been nothing short of spectacular. The new company didn't just offer better pay, they delivered on every promise. Proper team support, reasonable deadlines, management that actually listens to technical concerns, and compensation that reflects the value I bring. I've been promoted twice in 3 years. My stress levels are manageable, and I actually have time for things like hobbies and relationships. Revolutionary concepts, apparently. My former employer? They're now in what they diplomatically call a strategic downsizing phase due to challenging market conditions. Translation: they lost several major contracts, couldn't replace the institutional knowledge that walked out the door, and are desperately trying to cut costs to stay afloat. The best part? I occasionally run into former colleagues at industry events. The stories they tell about the chaos that followed my departure would be hilarious if they weren't so predictable. Turns out that when you build your entire operation around exploiting one person's dedication, losing that person tends to expose some fundamental structural problems. The lesson? Know your worth, time your exit. This experience taught me several valuable lessons. 1. Companies will take as much as you're willing to give. Setting boundaries isn't just healthy, it's essential for your career longevity. 2. Your loyalty means nothing if it's not reciprocated. They'll promise you the world during retention conversations, but actions speak louder than words. 3. Timing can be everything. Sometimes the universe hands you the perfect moment to make a statement. When it does, don't hesitate. 4. Document everything. When they question your decision, having a paper trail of their poor management makes the conversation very short. 5. The market will value you even if your current employer won't. Don't let one company's poor judgment convince you that you're not worth more. The whole situation could have been avoided with basic human decency and fair compensation. Instead, their penny-wise, pound-foolish approach cost them millions in lost contracts and immeasurable damage to their reputation in the industry. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's success. Top comment. Holy shit, the balls on you to sign like contract mid-meeting. I'm getting secondhand adrenaline just reading this. Quick question though, did you have to work out a notice period or did they just let you walk immediately? Because if I was them, I'd be terrified of what you might do during your last 2 weeks, LOL. Author. They actually tried to make me work a full month notice initially, but after about 3 days of me fielding constant panicked calls from clients and having to explain the same system architecture to 5 different people, they realized keeping me around was just making things worse. paid me out for the rest of the notice period, and wished me luck. Pretty sure they were just as eager to get rid of me as I was to leave at that point. Comment. This hits way too close to home. I'm currently the backbone for a small MSP and getting the exact same treatment. Constant promises, expanding workload, insulting raises. The difference is I don't have the courage to jump ship yet because they've convinced me I'm family and too valuable to lose. Reading your story is like looking into a crystal ball of what happens when companies actually face consequences for treating their people like shit. Saving this post for motivation when I finally work up the nerve to start job hunting. Author. Dude, that family and too valuable language is classic manipulation. If you were really family, they'd treat you better. If you were really too valuable, they'd pay you accordingly. Start updating that resume. The market is hot right now for people with MSP experience. Comment. I work for a digital agency too, and this story is giving me Vietnam flashbacks. The part about promising 99.999% uptime while having one person maintaining everything is so accurate it hurts. We literally had a similar situation where our infrastructure guy left and took 3 months to find someone competent enough to even understand what he had built, let alone maintain it. Plot twist, though, was this agency based in the Midwest by any chance? Because the timeline and details sound suspiciously like a company that imploded around here a few years back. Author. Haha, I'm not going to dox myself, but let's just say if you think you know which company, you're probably not the only one connecting those dots. The digital agency world is smaller than people think. Comment. As someone who works in B2B contract management, that client pulling out after a year is chef's kiss perfect. You know what's beautiful about this? That client probably gave them multiple chances to fix the issues before terminating. Companies like yours don't just lose contracts overnight. It's death by 1,000 cuts of missed SLAs, incident reports, and broken promises. I guarantee there were heated internal discussions at that client company Scoodum about whether to give your old employer one more chance before someone finally said, enough is enough. Comment. The mental health aspect of this story really resonates with me. That part about 3 a.m. emergency calls and stress-induced insomnia? I lived that life for almost 5 years at a different company. Even after I left, it took months to stop waking up in a panic thinking I'd missed an alert. For anyone reading this who's in a similar situation, your health isn't worth any job. I know it feels like you're letting people down by leaving, but companies are designed to survive personnel changes. If they can't function without one person, that's a management failure, not your responsibility to fix by sacrificing your well-being. Author. This exactly. It took me almost a year to stop having anxiety dreams about server outages. The psychological damage from being someone's single point of failure is real. I'm glad you got out too. Hope you're doing better now. Comment. I'm actually a director at a tech company, and stories like this terrify me because I see how easily this could happen to us. We have a few indispensable people, and reading this is a wake-up call that we need to cross-train and document everything ASAP. Question for OP. Do you think there was any way your old company could have retained you at the end? Like if they had immediately matched the competitor's offer and promised to hire help, would you have stayed? Author. Honestly, by that point, no. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about trust and respect. They had literally years to address these issues and chose not to. The competitor's offer wasn't just better pay. It was validation that my skills and experience actually had value. Sometimes burning bridges is the only way to stop yourself from going back to a toxic situation. Write what you think about this situation. Also, if you like this video, give a thumbs up, subscribe, and turn on the bell to receive notifications about the latest videos. See you next time. Bye-bye.